Hi, my name is Claudia Russell, and this is my chapter 10, 11, and 15, or 10, 11, 15, and 16 takeaways. So in chapter 10, kind of the biggest thing that I first started off learning was emotional cognition, our tendency to synchronize our emotional response with the people around us. And you kind of see this in two ways. One is behavioral mimicry. Hopefully I said that right. But this is unconsciously mimicking those behaviors and emotional expression of the people around us. Oftentimes you see this on our face. Sometimes it's vocal, posture, movement. And second is affective feedback. So that's how our own facial expressions affect how we feel and what we respond with. If your audience doesn't identify with you, expressing emotion can lead them to an unpredicted response. And that's called counter-cognition. But without emotion, reasoning is powerless. So in the chapter, it talks about 5 different emotions and how you can reason and connect with your audience. So you see anger, fear, compassion, aspiration, and happiness. And so, for example, with anger, you can use anger to effectively demonstrate harm and then recommend a response. With fear, it's very similar, but you show your audience that the harm is both significant but also likely to happen. But then you can recommend something that reduces that likelihood of the harm. So you see this with compassion, aspiration, and happiness. You see our emotions can evoke responses out of us, but you can evoke emotions the most with stories. And this is actually the most effective. And this is kind of what I really wanted to apply was the amplification and the minimization aspect of invoking emotion with stories, kind of emphasizing what was risky, what was difficult, what was safe, and really emphasizing those parts of your stories that can make it a little bit more dramatic to have more of an emotional response. So the second chapter was chapter 11. So this was over language and style. So language is our shared symbols that we use to communicate. These are words with denotive meaning that can have a wide range of cognitive meaning, which that is very wordy. Essentially, you have a positive word, which could be youth, and on the other side of the scale, the same word of youth means juvenile, and that is a negative word. And so you can kind of see these with a lot of words. But as people, we are placed in speech communities. These are groups that share common attitudes, values, and behaviors around language. So a regional speech community that I'm in is I use the word y'all a lot. I don't use you all or you are, And so if I was to go up north, I might try to say you all, which that would become code switching, alternating your use of language to fit the norms of a different speech community. And you often see this with like Spanish and English here in the States where we have a lot of Spanish-speaking people. We also see code mixing, which this is mixing the norms of multiple speech communities together. And this will often times help a speaker bridge a gap to its audience. But if you do this poorly, that will widen the gap. Next thing that we saw in this chapter was style, and that a speaker uses language to produce a particular effect of sensation. And so this is how a speaker uses the language. So there's 3 types of styles, and this is where I found most interesting, but what I really wanted to apply to my life was you have grand, plain, and middle. So grand is using figures of speech, vivid imagery, and metaphors, but plain is using simple, clear, concise language. And your middle style has a little bit of both. And so that's what I really want to apply to my life because I feel like I use a lot more of the plain style. I try to keep things as consistent or as concise and clear as possible, but I think there is a time and place for imagery and for metaphors, and so I kind of want to be able to bridge that gap. So chapter 15 was informing and educating. So when your purpose is informing, your primary goal is providing the audience with information or skills that they don't already have. So in this chapter, we learned about the 3 C's. You have challenge, controversy, and credibility. Challenge is how you're going to extend your audience's existing knowledge or skills. And this is where you are wanting to build on what they already know and challenge them to grow in their knowledge. Controversy is a debate or disagreement among different views. Controversy about a topic is a key sign that your speaking situation calls for persuasion rather than informing. And the next chapter that we'll talk about, chapter 16, is all about persuasion. So the last C was credibility. So your audience trusts that you have a relevant experience, knowledge, values, and identities to speak on a particular topic. So oftentimes you want to choose an informative purpose that takes advantage of your strengths and of your standpoint. This whole semester, throughout all of the chapters, we've been talking about this standpoint that we have. That comes in handy even here. So what I really want to apply to my life is choosing a topic that gives me minimal controversy, but an increased credibility and just the right amount of challenge. And once you do all of that, you can then pick your strategy. So this chapter talked about 5 different strategies, and those strategies were emphasizing the meaning. So relevance, the meaning, you do that in your intro and your conclusion. Connecting to existing knowledge. It's hard to connect with your audience when they don't know about your topic. So pick a topic that's relevant so that you can connect with what they already know. Clarify ambiguity. So you want to make clear with examples, kind of harder things to understand. Then visualize complexity. So you want to show visual representations of your topic. Maybe this is showing pictures or graphs. Just giving your audience something visual to see. And then last, you want to balance abstraction and specificity. So this depends on your context, basically more or less of the technical things. So last chapter is chapter 16, and chapter 16 was on persuading and motivating. So whenever you ask your audience to take action or reconsider their beliefs, engaging in persuasion. So persuasion is someone's attitudes or values or behaviors over a specific topic. So when you're having a persuasion speech, this does require a certain element of controversy because you're trying to persuade somebody to believe what you believe or agree with what you agree with. So each chapter we saw 4 levels of controversy. You have fact, value, action, and policy. And it kind of went through. So disagreement of fact is disagreeing about evidence gained through observation or historical evidence. So oftentimes this is like the Big Bang Theory, a lot of things that are easier to agree on, but not everybody agrees on. I kind of thought of this was like the bigger picture. And then you have disagreement of value. So this is good or bad, important or important. Kind of just those like opinion. And then the second one is disagreement of personal action. So this is what members of the audience should do or how they should behave. So this again is kind of personal preference, basically what you think the audience members should or shouldn't do. Lastly is disagreement of policy. So policies of an organization or institution should adopt this. Then move into ways to persuade each of these. So once you have figured out the 4 levels of controversy, figure out where your topic fits in, you then want to move into how to persuade each of these. Persuading is challenging, not only to the audience itself, but to the speaker, because it challenges the speaker to engage with controversial issues. And that's ultimately what I want to apply, because in some of my speeches talk about my faith and my love for the Lord. but I don't really engage in any other controversial topics, and that is something that I want to grow in and start to do a little bit more. But those are my takeaways for chapters 10, 11, 15, and 16. Thank you so much.